What I want to share about is it's in a conference that Brother Zach blessed us with, and it's about brokenness. I found that after I heard what Brother Zach talked about brokenness, it is something that I really wanted to strive and to do everything I can to conform to the brokenness that God sees as it, not to the brokenness that I understand to be, but what the brokenness that God understands it to be. And I was particularly blessed when Brother Zach was talking about the the miracle of the five loaves and two fish, where he asked them to bless them, but they didn't have any food, and finally they found food, and found the food and gave it to the Lord, and the Lord took the five fish, which was all that they had, and the Lord blessed it, broke it, and gave to the people, and then the people was blessed. And for me, I understood to be when the disciples gave the Lord all that they have. For me, is that I also need to give Jesus all that I have. I cannot hold anything back. I cannot hold one fish back, or not even one bread back. But I have to give everything to Him, and not holding back. But that is not enough. The Lord. So after the Lord got the bread and the fish, He blessed it. But even after He blessed it, the people were still hungry. The people were not fed. And for me, it was understanding that I can tell the Lord that, hey, Lord, I surrender my life to You. I'll give everything that I have, and I can see God's blessing in my life. But unless God breaks me, unless God breaks my will, I'm not able. He's not able to use me to bless other people in my life, in people around the church and around at work and things like that. So it is very easy for me to be deceived by my own flesh, thinking that just because I told the Lord that I surrendered to Him, and that I see His blessing in my life, thinking that I'm okay with God. But it is not. I have to be broken, and this brokenness means that for me, it means that brokenness for me means that I cannot do anything apart from God. It does not matter what I say, or what I do, or what I share. If it's not from the Lord, if it doesn't come from a fact that I cannot do anything apart from a God, that I will fall to the slightest temptation, let alone sin. If I don't have God with me, then I think that I am too good, and God cannot use me. I need to understand that without God, nothing is possible with me. That God has to be everything, that I cannot do anything without Him. In another picture, to close, another picture that really blessed me was when he was talking about Moses. In Moses, we'll talk about in Acts 7:22. Moses was told to be a very eloquent and powerful man, but in Exodus 4:10, Moses said that he was never eloquent. So I don't understand how Moses. The Bible says that Moses was very eloquent in the past, but then later on he told letters, said, Lord, I have been never eloquent, and that tells me that he was completely dead to his old man. Whatever the old man that used to rule his life in the past is no longer ruling his life now. When he said I was never eloquent, and for me it was a blessing, because I need to make sure that the old man that died on the cross when I was baptized, and I said, Jesus, the old man is dead now. I want to live for You. That old man can never surface again in my life. I need to completely be dead to it. I need to forget, just like Moses forgot that he was eloquent. He said, I've never been eloquent, which, we know that he was very powerful in Egypt, but he completely forgot. And this is something that I wanted to do too. I want to completely forget that old man that used to rule my life in the past, and to now know that, Lord, I need You. It doesn't matter what happens to me. I need You. It has to come from You, because if it comes from me, it means nothing. And if this brokenness life does not bring me joy, that means that I'm not serious about God. I'm really not, because it is in the weakness that God's power becomes that God's power becomes evident. It is in my weakness. So if I don't want it to, if I don't want this life of brokenness, that means that I'm just here doing nothing. I'm just here for show. I'm being a hypocrite. I need to have joy of being broken, because as I'm being broken, I get to know more about Jesus. I get to know about His love for me. I get to know more about His care, and most of all, I get to know that His will be done in my life. And I pray that God will continue to do that in me. Thank you.
Praise God. In Luke chapter 2, verse 19, if you can turn your Bible with me, let me read that verse. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. So I see here Mary did two things. One is she treasured something, and then the next step is she meditated on it. There are two actions here. The first thing I have received in the conference is I treasured a lot of godly wisdom. And now it is my responsibility to meditate on them. And as I was meditating on God's words, He was encouraging me through one word, one phrase that Brother Zach shared. Be quick to forgive and quick to ask for forgiveness. It's like two sides. Be quick to forgive and quick to ask for forgiveness. So I took this phrase to the Lord, and this is a picture that God gave me. As we just heard from Brother Arnaldo, the brokenness, as you bring it before God, imagine a cup. I bring my broken cup before God. God can help me with that brokenness. And now that I have this cup with me, in order for this cup to be served to others, it must be washed inside and outside. Imagine inviting me to as a guest to your house and giving me a cup, and when I look at the cup, I see something dirty inside. I would probably ask, can I have a different cup? So in the same way, this phrase, be quick to forgive and quick to ask for forgiveness, is two sides. Being quick to forgive is the inside part of the cup, and quick to ask for forgiveness is the outside part of the cup. As I go to serve my Lord, and as I go and offer my cup to the Lord, there is two sides of the cup that I have to cleanse. It's an action that I do from my side. Cleanse the inside part as I forgive others, and cleanse the outside part as I ask others for forgiveness, even if I have the singlest thought in my mind that they have done something wrong against me. You might remember God mentioned in some words in the Bible, in the Gospel, He said that if you're giving an offering and if you realize that you have something against your brother, leave it there, go back, go and ask for forgiveness and come back. So if I invite some guest over to my house and if I realize that my cup is dirty, I have to go back, rinse my cup once again, make it thoroughly better inside and outside, and then go and serve this. In John chapter 13 verse 4, if you can, John chapter 13 verse 1 to 5, we see Jesus. Let me just run through it. In verse 1, John chapter 13 verse 1, Jesus knew that the hour had come for Him to leave this world and go to the Father. In verse 2, I'm quickly running through it, and while the evening meal was in progress, in verse 4, as he was having his meal, he got up from the meal and he's doing something very quickly. He poured water into a basin. He began to wash his disciples' feet. So this was very quick. He was having his meal, and that's when he realized, my time has come. My time is almost here. It was very quick. He ran to grab the water, the basin, filled it with water, and began to wash his disciples' feet. Throughout the gospel, I see Jesus say, go bring me the donkey, go fill the jar with water, go do this, go do that, go get the coin from the fish. But here, Jesus did not tell, go do this to his disciples. But Jesus first, what he did is he showed us an example of how he himself has to wash his disciples' feet. So he himself went and took the basin, poured water, began to wash his disciples' feet. Even before the disciples realized that the feet were dirty. Even before they realized the meaning of this. So this is what I want to practice daily. When I take my cup and I go before the Lord, before I go to serve my Lord, I want to ask myself, is my cup clean? Is it clean inside? Is it clean outside? So just like the phrase Brother Zach encouraged us, be quick to forgive and quick to ask for forgiveness. May God bless us all.
I want to share from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. My grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. God's desire for each one of us is that He manifests His power through our lives. And the way He can manifest His power is through weaknesses in our lives. He cannot manifest His power through any of our strengths. It's a spiritual principle. And the Lord is looking for people who are weak so that He can manifest His power mightily through our lives. As Arnoldo shared about brokenness, we all think that we're strong in some areas, and we begin our Christian lives thinking we can accomplish something for God, we can overcome sin in our own strength. But the Lord has to take us through different circumstances in order to break us and make us weak, because that's the only way through which His power can become manifested through our lives. So the Lord takes us through multiple situations that make us weak in our own eyes and also in the eyes of the others, so that He can display His power mightily through our lives. It says in Acts 10:38 about Jesus that He was anointed with power and He went around doing good. And Paul also uses the example of Jesus in 13th chapter of the same book to emphasize this truth that weakness and power go hand in hand. If you turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 4, it says, Paul is talking about Jesus. Indeed, He was crucified because of weakness, yet He lives because of the power of God. For we also are weak in Him, yet will live with Him because of the power of God directed toward me. So Jesus was the most weakest when He was on the cross, but God used that to display His mighty power in resurrecting Him from the dead. And the Lord also wants to do mighty things through our lives, but He cannot do us unless we become weak. And therefore He takes us through different scenarios, situations in life that bring us to a point where we say, God, I can do nothing of my own. I'm just a branch. Unless I abide in you, I cannot bear fruit. I just want to share one verse from the life of Jesus that shows how God the Father allowed Jesus to be perpetually weak, not just on the cross, but throughout His entire life. If you turn with me to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3. This is Isaiah talking about Jesus. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, He was despised and we did not esteem Him. Unlike what we think about Jesus, He was somebody who was despised by others. He was perpetually despised and rejected by people, not just on the cross, but even when He lived on the earth. And that was the means through which the Lord ensured that He was weak and the power of God was manifested mightily through the life of Jesus. When His own brothers did not trust Jesus, when people called Him the prince of the devil, Jesus was being made weak so that God can manifest His power through His life. I hope this can be an encouragement to you even as you deal with different situations in life that are making you weak. That you can look at this verse and say, the power of God will be manifested in my life through this moment of weakness, and His grace will be sufficient for me, not my own strength, not my own self-sufficiency, but the grace of God will be sufficient for me in this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. The part of the conference that challenged me the most was also on brokenness, and I'd like to read a quote from session 4 on Saturday at the 39-minute mark, if you look it up on YouTube. This is something Brother Zach said. God has a purpose for you, but that purpose will not be accomplished if God does not succeed in breaking you and humbling you and making you realize that you are a zero, making you realize that without Him, you can do nothing of eternal value. That is brokenness. I've seen young people like this who feel they are so dedicated and consecrated that God will use them more than everyone else, who compare themselves to other people in the church and think that I'm the one that God is going to use, and I'm the one who's fit to be an elder here, or something like that. It's scary, because I know that nothing will come of their life. They will live to 80 and waste their life. But if God can succeed in breaking them early in life, when they are young, what tremendous usefulness can come through their life. That is why I say to those of you who are young, let God break you. This was the part of the conference that touched me the most, because I fall into that category of people that Brother Zach speaks about. So the first thing I want to share is that I've seen that brokenness is something I need to take seriously, because I want God to fulfill His purpose for me in my life. There's a beautiful verse in Acts chapter 13, verse 36. Acts 13, verse 36, which speaks about David. And it says about him, Acts 13, verse 36. For David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation, fell asleep. And I think what a wonderful way to summarize one's life. I thought if I could get to heaven and God could think of me and remember me like that, I put my name in there. Say, when I, after he served the purpose of God in his own generation, fell asleep. That'd be wonderful. No more and no less. And I believe that God has a tremendous purpose in my life. How do I know that? I can just simply look at the things that God has invested in my life. For example, God's invested in me a wonderful church with brothers and sisters, many of whom I can look up to. God's invested in me elders who care and watch over me. God's invested in me by allowing me to meet Brother Zach and hearing so many of these wonderful truths that we hear at church. And God's invested in me by giving me the best helper I could ever ask for in my wife. Now, the question is, did God invest all these things in me so that I could live for myself and have a nice, comfortable Christian life? The answer is no. I believe that God has a purpose for me, and He expects a return on this investment. And I believe that if you have a similar investment that God has done in you, then God has a wonderful purpose for you as well. So because I see this purpose that God has in my life, I want to take this idea of brokenness seriously. Now, practically speaking, how does one actually become broken? And Brother Zach answered this really well in the 6th session, which is on Sunday, at roughly the 52-minute mark, if you look on YouTube. And he said this: if you want God to really break you, just obey everything written in Scripture. I thought that was really nice and simple way to summarize everything. I remember hearing about the example of Peter during the conference, how Peter, God had to allow him to fall into sin in order to break him. And I was thinking, I don't want to follow the way of Peter. That's not my example in terms of being broken. I would rather follow the example of someone, let's say like a Joseph, who even though God had to break him, he never sinned in that whole time. And that's a better example for me to follow. Because I realized that there's two ways in which God can humble me. I could humble myself, or I could have God humble me. And I think it's much less painful if I humble myself. You think of like a piece of clay. If it's nice and soft, it's easy to mold. But if it's a hard piece of clay, you have to chip at it. And I don't want God to chip away at me, because that's going to really hurt. So that's why I want to take obedience really seriously, because I believe that's the path to brokenness. But I also want to share an encouragement, and it's that God is more interested than I am in fulfilling His purpose for me. And the reason I say that is from Ephesians chapter 2, verse 18. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 18, it says, for we are His workmanship. Chapter 2, verse 10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them. So notice it says in this verse that God prepared good works for us. It doesn't say God commanded us to do good works, and there's a difference. Here's what prepared means to me. Last year I got a wonderful chance to propose to my wife. And for that day, I had to make huge preparations. I prepared the fact that she had to be home at a certain time so that her friend could pick her up. I prepared the fact that I had to go meet her at a certain place so that I could propose to her. And I made a plan that we had to be back at home by a certain time so to have dinner with her parents. So I prepared all these things. Now imagine if Crystal that day said, you know what, I just want to stick around and maybe go to Starbucks or something like that. Who do you think would be more disappointed that day? I certainly would be a lot more disappointed. Why? Because I made all these plans. Now, similarly, think of God. God who from the beginning of time looked and saw that we would follow Him. And He decided to make preparations for us that we would do good works for Him. He made preparations by investing in us, like we mentioned earlier, and arranging all the circumstances in our life so that we could walk in that good work. Who do you think would be more disappointed if we're not interested in that? I believe God is tremendously interested in helping me to fulfill my purpose for Him on this earth. And I have 100% faith that God will help me to walk this path of brokenness, and that when I get to heaven, I can look back and say, God, truly, you fulfilled your purpose in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, brothers. I have a couple of things to share. For a true fellowship, what are the some of the things, some of aspects of true fellowship in family and the church? First thing is seek to be no one, seek to be nobody. I hope many of you still remember the illustration of that Brother Zach used of mashed potato. So how big and small potatoes are mashed. I mean, they're like once they become mashed potato, and it's all like one piece. I mean, the individual potatoes lose their identity. I felt, I mean, that illustration really blew me off, and I was thinking about it even after the conference. Like, how does a potato become part of a mashed potato? First, it has to be boiled. It has to be, its skin has to be peeled off. Symbolically, I felt that it's like a person going through trials and weaknesses and difficult circumstances, and mashed to blend into other potatoes. I also remember this. The words of John the Baptist, that I must decrease and he must increase. So a potato, it lost its identity, but it brought its flavor into that. So when I look up about a human body too, there are different parts and organs. Each organ is very important, but we don't identify the body by part or organ, but we identify it as a full body. Like that, true fellowship should be. But each part is very important. Even the head feels the pain if something is wrong with certain part of the body. So I want to strive to be alone, never seek a name for myself, no matter what I do. Because I think when I was sharing this in Bible study too, Brother Joshua brought this point. When you see the spirit of Babel, when people wanted to build a big tower, it says in Genesis chapter 11 verse 4, they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name." This is the spirit of Babylon, always seeking to make a name for ourselves. But what is the spirit of Jerusalem? 100% glory belongs to God alone, because compared to what God has done for me, whatever little I do, it just pales out. It's nowhere close. So all glory, 100% belongs to God. In corporate world, we see that everyone wants to jump to take the credit whenever there is a success, but it's not the case in the family of God. Let all God get all the glory. I also saw a beautiful contrast in Matthew chapter 25, where when Jesus was talking to the righteous people and remembered them, told them that you did all this to me. I was sick, you visited me. I was naked, you clothed me. And they said, the righteous people who they forgot about all that they did, all the good deeds they did. They asked the Lord, when did we do this to you? But when you compare that with Matthew chapter 7 verse 22, there are a lot of people who remembered all the good things they have done, all the miracles that they have done for the Lord. In God's kingdom, I want to be nothing and God to be everything. I must be secured in the love of the Heavenly Father to fight against the spirit of competition or making a name. When I'm so rooted and grounded in God's love, that's all is enough. In Ephesians chapter 3 verse 17 it says, I must be rooted and grounded in God's love. I also was reminded about few people whose names are not mentioned, but what they did was super significant in Bible, in many miracles. So Naaman's maid, who helped him to go to Israel and got healed of his leprosy. And we also know in Matthew 26, we see a woman who anointed the head of Jesus. We also see in Luke chapter 21 verse 2, the poor widow who cast her 2 mites into the treasury. She's also an unknown person. The boy who brought 5 loaves and 2 fish, his name is not mentioned. John chapter 6 verse 9. But the point is, it's not the name, it's what they did is super important. And that had a big impact on many people, and we still read that in the scriptures. So God has purposefully hidden their names, but what they did is very significant. I'm sure when I get to heaven, I will see many people who are totally unknown on this earth would have done so much for the Lord. I want to be one among them. And the second aspect is the cross, the importance of cross in the fellowship. Brother Zach mentioned that there must be a cross that I must die to have fellowship with another person, and never demand the other person to also to die on the cross. It's only my part is to die on the cross that God has given me, and wherever there is no cross, there is no true fellowship. It's only a friendship. That was a really good reminder. Even when it comes to husband and wife, we can only have friendship if I'm not dying on the cross. And also, he mentioned as part of the family life, he said the best inheritance we can give to our children is an atmosphere of heaven, peace, love, and unity between husband and wife, and where Jesus feels home and is honored. I truly believe that we can get a taste of heaven in the family by following Christ's way of taking up the cross. This is more important than giving riches and education to our children, the things that we think that are important to leave for them. More important is the heavenly atmosphere. I need to die to my preferences, selfish ambitions, and the spirit of entitlement in my life. Just one example I want to share. This is a personal one, but I told Jyoti that I'm going to share this. Last year, we were supposed to go to India. That happened like 1 month after we bought a home. And we booked the tickets for Jyoti and children, and I did not plan to go before, so about a month ago. So they got the very good price. And then later on, I was also planning to go, and the circumstances changed, and I was planning to go. And when I went and checked the tickets, they are very expensive compared to the deal I got for them. Then I was looking for different options because I was thinking of saving money now that a lot of money went out to purchase a home. I was thinking, okay, let me take this option. I'll take a different route. We will meet there, but we'll fly differently. On the same day, but we'll fly in different planes. Jyoti was totally against it. And we had a debate because she said, let's go together. We have such a long journey. I was saying, let's save money. So I was thinking like more logically, and I realized that I had more logical brain than emotional brain at that moment. But finally, I decided to give in because that's important for her, that we travel together. And I was sharing this example with Brother Zach, and he said, yeah, that's very important, that it's okay to lose money sometimes in pursuing the unity, in doing things that bring joy and peace in the family. It's okay. Sometimes we may have to lose money, but that's perfectly okay, because unity in home is supreme priority. And also, I can testify with my wife that over a period of, it has been 5 years since we came, that we have grown in unity and our desire to be united to one another. And because I believe that family to be united is a fundamental aspect for all the best functioning of the church. Each family to be united. Yeah, and also finally, I just wanted to, as part of taking up the cross, I wanted to say, Jesus came here not to be served, but to serve. So when my God, who came to this world to serve and not to be served, and who even washed the disciples' feet. So this is another aspect of taking up the cross for me in the setting of a family, so that I can have true fellowship, so that I won't go home to be served, but to serve one another.